Is the guy who will defeat Sauron dead, I wonder? Is Sauron dead forever, I wonder? Is the husband of Galadriel dead, I wonder? Will the dwarves mine Mithril? Will the Balrog attack the dwarves? Will the elven race fade away? Even the illiterate know the answer to any of these questions thanks to the movies. None of this should be a mystery, but the best part is how it's written. How is it possible to have 6 episodes of Galadriel mourning the death of her brother and not a single line on her husband's disappearance? This is insane. Why is it not at least mentioned in the prologue?
My brother vowed to seek him out, but Sauron found him first.
What about your husband? She's searching for the mark no one has ever seen and not for her missing husband. I don't know what to say. Does she hate him? Is that why she calls him a silver clam? The writers dropped the line for shock value and left the room. It doesn't serve the development of her character at all. When he shows up next season, music will play, she will have tears in her eyes and it will be so touching, but she won't cry, because you know the truth, she doesn't care about him. To make a mystery more meaningful, the writers sometimes use cheap tricks like arbitrary countdown clocks. Will the dwarves mine Mithril before the elven race fades away? Well, now that Elrond and Durin are best friends again, they can mine, but the king doesn't want them to, so they'll just wait for him to die, even though it will be too late by then. But all of this doesn't matter anyway, because it turns out they had enough Mithril all along, so it's fine. What a payoff. It's almost like they wanted dwarves in the story, but didn't know what to do with them. In the case of Halbrand's identity, it's not something a viewer can find out in the movies, so that's great. However, using Sauron's identity as the climax of the whole season when the writers can't even write a mystery on a smaller scale is not so great. The events leading up to the twist are confusing. There is no definitive answer to what Sauron was doing all this time. They say he's a bad guy, but it's difficult to reconcile with everything that happened. Was Sauron in control the whole time? Was it all pure luck? Or is it a bit of both? We don't know. As it stands, the story is either unbelievable or Galadriel is the unluckiest woman in the universe. Allow me to briefly summarize what happened in the first 4 episodes and then tell me how anyone is supposed to yell, "It explains everything" at their TV screen when Sauron is revealed. Keep in mind you're not allowed to write the story for the writers, and if it all makes sense, ask yourself why it's not explained during the reveal to blow our minds. Galadriel jumps off the ship and swims away from Valinor. Halbrand's ship is destroyed, so he builds a raft. They both find each other in the middle of nowhere. They survive the sea monster and the raft is not destroyed. They can't choose where the raft is sailing during the storm. The raft ends up at the perfect time and place to be picked up by a ship. The captain of the ship happens to be an elf friend. Elendil brings them to Númenor, even though no elf has been allowed in since the reign of the grandfather's great-grandfather of the queen. Galadriel lashes out at the queen, so she has to stay in Númenor. The queen agrees to let them stay for 3 days even though they are rude, and Númenor doesn't want an elf in the city because the elves will steal all the jobs. Elendil committed treason because the sea is always right. Elendil is not put in jail or demoted, but promoted. Galadriel pulls a knife on Elendil and he chooses to help her because she looks like his children. Elendil betrays the queen for the 2nd time and sends Galadriel to the archives. Galadriel is interested in the mark of a king around the neck of a random guy and finds information about it in the archives that are incomplete. Galadriel believes Halbrand is king, although he claims not to be. No one around her questions it, and no one knows the lineage was broken. Halbrand tries to join a guild. Halbrand chooses to buy everyone a drink, then chooses to steal a guild crest, then chooses to beat up 4 men. Halbrand ends up in jail. Galadriel is also locked up and they have a conversation about how to get some leverage. Galadriel escapes by pushing 4 soldiers. Pharazôn is here for some reason and chooses to listen to Halbrand rather than going after her. Pharazôn agrees to bargain with Halbrand. After being arrested for sedition, Galadriel goes even further by breaking into the tower to see the king she's been told not to see. The queen is here because Pharazôn took the deal. Now that they are both here, they can speak again. The queen is nice to her and she agrees to a truce even though Galadriel just broke in. The queen suddenly trusts Galadriel and shows her the palantir. The petals of the tree fall down, so the queen agrees to go to war. Now again, maybe you can explain everything I've just said. Don't, Amazon didn't pay you to. In fact, whether it's well written or not is irrelevant. My point is, if you haven't watched a video called "Figuring Out What's Happening on the Show for 12 Hours Straight," the events leading up to the big reveal feel either random or completely disconnected from any purpose. There's too much going on between Ada's plan that used to be Sauron's plan, what isn't Sauron's plan, the storyline of Elrond with the Mithril, the storyline in the Southlands with Mount Doom, and what stems from stupidity, improvisation, luck, or divine intervention. The problem lies not in one of these points, but in the sum of them all, which makes it extremely unlikely. And I only talked about 3 episodes. There's more, like my personal favorite, Galadriel and Sauron surviving a pyroclastic flow. It really makes the story believable. Maybe the place is so evil the volcano gives off no warmth. The showrunners stated they purposefully made it confusing because in the lore it is unclear whether Sauron is actually repentant or not. That's just great. They kept the only thing from the lore they shouldn't have. It doesn't work with a plot twist. Haha, I was evil all along, but maybe only in the middle or just at the end, who knows, haha. What the writers do here creates confusion so the viewer cannot be sure that the reveal makes sense. By leaving it open to interpretation, they can pretend that it's well written and never explain. So it's fair to say that the story is unclear at this point in time and it seems like random events rather than a coherent story. Even if everything is explained in Season 2, it's already too late. Keeping the audience waiting 2 years to see if the story was great is silly. It's a TV show, not everything must be explained in Season 1, but enough should be. The story of Halbrand just feels like a complete waste of time. There's a huge difference between expecting the audience to fill in the gaps and expecting the audience to write the entire story. The problem with a confusing story where no definitive answer is given is that it affects the clues foreshadowing the twist. What makes an effective plot twist is not the revelation, but the events leading up to it. If we find out in Season 2 that Nori was Batman all along, it would be pretty mind-blowing. But that would be because it comes out of nowhere. It's basically impossible for someone who isn't familiar with the lore to see the twist coming. It's an issue because most of the audience has only seen the movies. Sauron crafting the One Ring in the movies doesn't mean he is a blacksmith, nor that he would enjoy crafting random swords. There's no indication that Sauron had the ability to change his physical form. There's actually very little information about Sauron in the movies and in the show, which means the twist is surprising but mostly confusing to the general audience. There's only one clue for the general audience.
It seems to me that you do well to identify what it is that your opponent most fears. Give them a means of mastering it.
It's a big one, but it's not enough. The other clues are simply too vague. We tried to set it up where every single line would be true to a certain extent, no matter who he is. The showrunner is casually admitting that the clues are terrible and could mean absolutely anything. And the best part is they believe this is clever writing. The average viewers may guess that Halbrand isn't telling the whole truth, but for them to think that he's Sauron would be quite a leap. The clues are superficial and mean very little.
Does she look dangerous to you?
Looks can be deceiving.
Wink wink.
I'm simply wondering what manner of man would so readily abandon his companions to death.
Wink wink.
Since when did men like me build kingdoms such as this?
These men are not like you.
Wink wink.
What are you called again?
Depends.
Depends on what?
How close we are.
Wink wink. These are not clues, but winks and nods to the viewer. It's very low-effort writing. If the audience isn't aware of his passion for forging, it can't be reconciled with the winks to guess he's Sauron. Alright, so the general audience can't see the twist coming. It's a shame, but on rewatch they'll get to experience the story in a completely different way, like The Prestige. Oh my god, it changes everything. Oh my god, it doesn't change anything, because the things explained by the twist are again very superficial. Why is Halbrand conflicted? Instead of thinking he's conflicted because of something he did as a man, now you know he's conflicted because of something he did as Sauron. It doesn't change the fact that he's conflicted about something. If Sauron were actually pretending to be conflicted to trick Galadriel, then it would be interesting to go back and watch every time he messed with her. Why does Halbrand hate Adar? Instead of thinking he was mad at him for killing his wife, now you know he's mad at him for killing him. It doesn't change the fact that he hates him anyway. If Adar and Sauron were actually pretending to fight, then that would be a departure from what we originally believed. Alright Payne, you get the next one. When Galadriel and Halbrand have a heart-to-heart in episode 5, he says, "I'm sorry about your brother." He's the guy who effectively killed her brother. So is there a real pathos that's happening there, where he is genuinely apologizing? Is he messing with her? We design every moment so you can be, is it a thing he's saying because it's true? Or is he playing a role to manipulate her? Thank you, it was nice having you on. So that's my whole point. We know who he is, but we still don't get what he's talking about or why he's making those choices. Like Payne astutely pointed out, Is it a thing he's saying because it's true, or is he playing a role to manipulate her? Those are the real questions, and they are not answered. He beat up 4 men because he's a bad guy. Okay, now I get it. But why did he give them drinks? Why did he steal a guild crest? Did he plan to get arrested? Is there a reason why he chose such a weird way of getting arrested? Is Sauron the Deceiver unable to deceive 4 men? Those are the real questions, and they are not answered. Nothing really changes on rewatch because the clues are terrible. Either you throw in enough real clues or you don't. Anything in between looks like you tried and failed at putting together your story. Some plot twists don't actually require any foreshadowing to be effective, but this one really does because of the way the story is written. The Rings of Power is a slow burner with 10 main characters, 4 different intrigues and only 8 episodes. And yet, the writers decided to reveal Sauron at the end of the season. It's way too early. Now bear with me here, I understand you may find him hot and cool because almost every character in this show is insufferable, but the guy has no personality. The only time Halbrand feels like a real character is at the end of episode 6, but after that he just vanishes until the finale. You might think it's not an issue because Halbrand doesn't actually exist in this universe. I agree, but a shallow character is not an interesting one. What's interesting about Halbrand are the questions that arise from the plot twist. In other words, everything the show doesn't tell us about. Let's take the Stranger as an example of a shallow character. If he turned out to be Sauron, the correct response would be, "Oh my god, the guy who never speaks and doesn't do anything is actually Sauron. I don't care." There's not enough character work, no explanation of his feelings and goals. It doesn't change how the viewers see the Stranger or Halbrand because there wasn't enough to look at in the first place. How much better would it have been to reveal Sauron at the end of season 2 when all the pieces on the board are set? 2 seasons of deceit, 3 seasons of all-out war. A writer with a decent story can conceal Sauron for 15 episodes or plant a reasonable degree of doubt in the mind of the viewer. Just let Sauron be sad for a while, then have him in a position of trust with the good guys where his evil side comes out despite himself. Funny thing is, that's probably what they went for in this season, but Halbrand is too passive to make it believable. If they had to show Sauron for the ratings, then why not reveal him only to the viewer at the end of the season? In season 1 we've seen the story through the eyes of Galadriel. In season 2 let's see the story through Sauron's. We would see him forge the rings and trick everyone. We would be in on the joke. The only thing we've learned about Sauron is that he is a great craftsman. Have we learned about his ability to deceive people? Well, his actions are open to interpretation according to the showrunners, so maybe, maybe not. Did he manipulate Galadriel? Maybe, or maybe she's unlucky. Did he trick this fine gentleman? Maybe, or maybe he failed. Did he manipulate the elves? Depends. Did he corrupt the tree? Did he tell the elves about Mithril? Was he aware of Elrond and Durin's relationship and that Durin had just enough Mithril? Did Sauron become the Lord of the Rings instead of the Lord of the Crowns because they only had a small fragment of Mithril? Maybe. One thing is certain, he fooled the writers because they can't explain it. The massive opportunity to get the bad guy to speak with the good guys over an entire season is just wasted. How cool would it have been to watch 2 completely different people coming together to craft perfection? Instead of this, we got poorly written dialogue of Celebrimbor talking about himself at the 3rd person and then a montage. I'm not sure why this show is called The Rings of Power. A massive missed opportunity is exactly what the relationship between Halbrand and Galadriel is. Whatever he did wasn't enough to affect her in a significant way. She didn't kill anyone in cold blood because of him. She didn't sell her soul or betrayed her beliefs. She did nothing terrible that she could not have done without Sauron. This is yet another issue because the main character has nothing to learn from this entire twist, which makes the whole arc a waste of character development. The only piece of advice from Sauron is this.
In an instance like this, it seems to me that you do well to identify what it is that your opponent most fears. Give them a means of mastering it.
And the only time Galadriel comes close to doing it is,
Remember why you chose this path. Remember your faith.
Do you think I could forget?
We still have 3 ships. And your father's blessing.
but it doesn't really work. She's just manipulating the queen with her fears, something Galadriel could have done anyway because she's brash and selfish. One could argue she's convincing herself that Halbrand is king to provide a mean for both her and the queen to master their fears, but it's a bit silly. The show pretends that the mission relies on him.
I have no doubt, come time, He will do his part.
Given that I've staked my name upon it, I should hope so.
The Queen will call you to audience. Your voice at that meeting may well decide whether this mission stands or falls.
But it's not true. What they really need from him is intel, nothing more. The Orcs must be stopped regardless of Halbrand's identity. Even if he could unite the people of the Southlands, it would take years to muster the resources needed for battle. Then perhaps he's the one who convinced her to see the king.
I demanded to speak with her father. The king in the tower, who no one has seen in years.
See what happens when you stop galloping.
She wanted to see him first, and again she would have broken into the tower without Sauron's advice anyway, because she does whatever she wants. There's nothing for her to learn from any of this. Mount Doom wasn't her fault, Sauron reaching Númenor wasn't her fault. She immediately noticed when Halbrand acted weird. It's not like she blindly trusts him. Even in episode 5 she noticed that she's helping him too much. It's not like she's naive. In fact, she's too careful and suspicious when there's no reason to be. Perhaps she learned that giving the throne to a random guy who said he wasn't king is a bad idea. I still don't get why anyone would write this, but that's besides the point. Galadriel believing that Halbrand is the king doesn't change anything in the grand scheme of things. He doesn't use his position. He could be a peasant and still take part in the meetings and in the fight. Alright, so what about Galadriel taking Halbrand to Eregion? Well, how is it meaningful to her character? Even if she hadn't mistaken him for the king, she would have taken him to the elves, because helping a peasant who saved her is the right thing to do. She wasn't blinded by her hubris or her desire for vengeance. In the first episode she clearly is when she puts her friends' lives on the line for no reason, but the second Halbrand told her about the Orcs, her obsession became warranted, even if it's a trap. She has nothing to learn from this besides not saving people because they might be Sauron. She goes too far many times.
Commander! Wait! No! We keep moving! Galadriel!
Because I believed they could no longer distinguish me from the evil I was fighting. But you shall be kept alive, so that one day, before I drive my dagger into your poisoned heart, I will whisper in your piked ear that all your offspring are dead. Slavering
Galadriel!
And my favorite one.
Suppose the words never managed to escape your throat.
But none of this has anything to do with Sauron. When she's watching the ash cloud come towards her in episode 6, she really feels what a terrible mistake her pride has led her to make and pull so many people into. Right, the famous movie trope where the character shouldn't have done something so a volcano explodes. So relatable. I'm so glad I only read 2 articles, because the more they explain, the less I understand. She raised an army, deleted the Orcs with it, saved a village, and caught the bad guy. She tried to stop the enemy, but somehow it's all her fault. She drastically reduced the risk of volcanic eruption without knowing it, and somehow it's all about her pride. And the most irritating part is that I have to stand up for the actions of a character that I detest. How can the writers say it was a mistake to save the elf, the woman, and the kid from certain death? I wish they were dead too, but I'm not the one who wrote them. There was no way for anyone in her position to notice he was Sauron, because the guy never does anything. If your mother turned out to be Sauron, would you learn anything from it? I wouldn't. There's nothing you could have done about it. There's no life lesson to draw from that crazy revelation. That's not what a cautionary tale is. It was destiny's fault. Oh no, sorry.
Ours was no chance meeting. Not fate, nor destiny, nor any of the words men use to speak of the forces they lack the conviction to name. Ours was the work of something greater.
I do. It's bad writing. Now, of course, Halbrand affected Galadriel's journey in a significant way because he gave her the exact location of the Orcs and saved her on the sea. But these are only plot points to move the story forward. At the very least, Halbrand should have been the one to give her the meaning of the mark. It would have been slightly ironic and a bit more meaningful for their relationship, because the mark is even more important to her than Silverclam. And now it's time to talk about the reason why Sauron is back. This is my favorite part. According to the show, it was actually Galadriel who had an impact on Halbrand. She's the one responsible for his big return as Sauron, and it's supposed to be the moral of the story. Let me clear up a misconception first. It's fun to meme about Sauron being evil because Galadriel doesn't love him, but it's not true. He was doing bad guy things before she rejected him. He asked her to join the Empire because it was worth a try, nothing more. Whether he has any feelings towards her is irrelevant in the context of the scene. Sauron is not a bad guy because he doesn't have a girlfriend. What makes Galadriel responsible is clearly stated by Sauron.
No, on the raft, you saved me.
On the raft, you saved me.
You convinced Miriel to save the men of Middle-earth.
You convinced her. I wanted to remain in Numenor. After our victory, you said, whatever I'd done before, I could be free of it
You
now.
deceived me.
I told you the truth. I told you that I had done evil and you did not care.
Let's go over each line.
No, on the raft, you saved me.
On the raft, you saved me.
What does it even mean? She didn't save him. In fact, the chances of him dying went up significantly when she got on board. If someone as annoying as her was on my raft, I would jump off. I searched the internet for a double meaning, but there isn't one according to the showrunner. I empowered the Dark Lord. I saved his life on a raft. I was party to him coming from obscurity to head an army. But she never saved his life on the raft. These interviews are driving me insane. Please, someone tell me where she saved him. He's untying the raft by himself. He could have gotten back on the ship alone, and he wouldn't have been in the water in the first place if she wasn't there.
You convinced Miriel to save the men of Middle-earth.
You convinced her. I wanted to remain in Numenor.
Second argument in a row that makes no sense. He never attempted to convince the Queen to rescue the men of Middle-earth. What is she talking about? She is literally the one who did, with the evidence and later in the tower. She even found the mark alone. Halbrand has nothing to do with it. There's like 4 arguments given by the show to support the idea that Galadriel brought back Sauron, and 2 of them make no sense. That's just great. Luckily, I'm something of a Rings of Power dialogue expert myself, so I get what they're failing to say. It still doesn't work though. Convincing the Queen to fight doesn't turn Sauron evil. Convincing everyone that he's king doesn't turn him evil. Convincing Halbrand to go to Middle-earth doesn't turn him evil. Again, if Halbrand got his mojo back after spending 10 years as the king of the Southlands, then sure, it would be her fault. But putting him in charge for a week, who cares? He does nothing.
After our victory, you said, whatever I'd done before, I could be free of it
You
now.
deceived me.
I told you the truth. I told you that I had done evil and you did not care.
He is referring to this scene.
Thank you for pulling me back.
As you pulled me back first.
And whatever it was you did, be free of it.
Fighting at your side, I felt if I could just hold on to that feeling. Keep it with me always. Bind it to my very being. Then
I felt it too.
Let's go over it.
Thank you for pulling me back.
as you pulled me back first.
Thank you for stopping me from killing Adar. No, thank you for stopping me from killing Adar. Well, that's not evil at all. It's actually pretty wholesome.
And whatever it was you did, be free of it.
A broad statement made because she believes he is a normal human being who probably had to kill to survive. Sauron has to be a moron to think she would say that if she knew who he was.
After our victory, you said, whatever I'd done before, I could be free of it.
No, you've convinced yourself of that. Let's assume it's her fault because she's the one who convinced him to convince himself to move on by simply telling him to move on, even though she doesn't know what he's moving on from. Then simple question, how does it turn him evil? Wouldn't that make him embrace his new life and try to live free from his sins? She says the horrible things he did in the past don't matter, so he starts doing horrible things again. What? 20 years ago I killed my brother. You said I should forgive myself and move on, so I'm going to shoot his grave. What? That's not forgiving yourself and moving on. That's doing the exact same thing all over again. Just let him be king for 10 years doing a really good job at it because he actually cares about healing Middle-earth. Then Galadriel somehow finds out about his true identity and forces him to abandon the great kingdom he built, which makes him realize that no matter what he does, he can never be forgiven. He gets mad and chooses to heal Middle-earth in a different way. I mean, it's not the most incredible story, but it's still better than the one they allegedly bought for $250 million. Telling him to move on could make him evil depending on what he actually forgives himself for. The orcs he killed is the only thing the show told us about. He should forgive himself and go back to Mordor. This could have been somewhat clever, but he fought the orcs and almost killed Adar, so that's not it.
Fighting at your side, I felt if I could just hold on to that feeling. Keep it with me always. Bind it to my very being. Then
I felt it too.
That feeling could be anything. He felt alive, he felt good about killing orcs, he felt happy fighting with Galadriel at his side, he felt like he was doing the right thing. No idea what he's talking about, but this line could explain why he wants her to join him. Them being friends, lovers, or anything else won't make him evil though. There's nothing to support the idea that Galadriel is responsible for Sauron's return. None of this has value, and yet she's responsible anyway because of a silly line.
We foresaw that if it had, she might have inadvertently kept alive the very evil she sought to defeat.
For the same wind that seeks to blow out a fire may also cause its spread.
Thanks to this line, everything can be her fault. She brought him back because she exists. She shouldn't exist because she's supposed to be in Valinor. She wasn't in Valinor because her obsession made her jump into the sea, which is why she meets Halbrand and thus seals her fate. What great writing. She's supposed to be in Valinor because the writers decided that Gil-galad has seen the future. It means there was nothing she could have done about it. This is the ultimate butterfly effect. If I go back in time long enough, I can find a reason to blame anyone for anything. A plot twist shouldn't be explained by mental gymnastics, so let's make it simple and look at her last action, taking Halbrand to Eregion. It's still awful because she made all the right choices and somehow that makes her responsible for the death of all your favorite characters in the Tolkien cinematic universe. Boromir died for her sins. The idea that she's responsible is not the issue. It could actually be interesting. Sauron is back because she's insufferable the entire season. Now that would be a great payoff. So that's not what we got. She's always right and her mistakes don't matter, so everything's fine. Her mistake is simply existing. Very annoying. The line of Gil-galad is here to shield the writers from any criticism.
She might have inadvertently kept alive the very evil she sought to defeat.
See, we predicted in episode 1 she would bring him back. It was all part of the plan. Inadvertently. What a joke. This kind of line doesn't make your writing meaningful and your storytelling entertaining. This plot twist shouldn't really exist at all. Perhaps it wouldn't have been such an issue if the show didn't spend 10 hours concealing the identity of every character. Who is the stranger? Who is Halbrand? Who are the three women? Who is Adar? There was nothing else to talk about. If you hype up your story by hiding the identity of every character, you better deliver. To believe that the twist is great, people have to write a decent amount of the story in their own head. After all, how can a story be bad if there is enough room for everyone to interpret it in a way that makes sense to them? Even if everything is explained in Season 2, it's already too late. No minds will be blown after 2 years of waiting. A plot twist is not a cliffhanger. The twist doesn't explain the story. The twist doesn't improve the show on second watch. The twist didn't allow for meaningful interaction. The twist didn't allow for meaningful character development. The twist can't justify its own existence. The legacy of this plot twist is 6 weeks of speculation on the internet and a new couple to ship. But stories are remembered because they're well written, not because they're trending on the internet for 2 months. Think of a twist from another movie or TV show and ask yourself how it served the story and its characters. To fully appreciate how bad Sauron's reveal is, you should watch and rewatch a movie with a good twist instead of this video, but I guess it's a bit late for that now.